The first buyer didn't stay long, walked the line, looked over the herd, barely said a word. Then he shook his head. Not what we're looking for. Said they were too slow to finish. Said the market wouldn't take them. Told him he'd have a hard time moving any of it. And after that, it didn't get any better. Same pasture, same cattle, same answer. No demand. Wrong kind of herd. Try again later. By the end of the week, no one wanted them. And that's when it started to sink in. Because this wasn't grain sitting in a bin. These were animals. Time mattered. Feed mattered. Every extra day cost something. And for the first time, it felt like he might be stuck with all of it. Until one call came in from a buyer he hadn't heard of before. The man didn't ask many questions, didn't hesitate. He just said, "How many head you got?" And when he heard the answer, he didn't negotiate. He said, "I'll take the whole herd." For the same cattle everyone else had passed on. His name was Calvin Reese, 56. Been raising cattle longer than most buyers had been in the business. Nothing large scale, nothing flashy, just steady work, and a way of doing things that hadn't changed much over the years. Most ranchers in the area raised cattle for one thing: speed. Get them to weight as fast as possible. Feed them heavy, move them through the system. Sell when the numbers made sense. That was the model. And it worked. But Calvin didn't push his herd that way. He let them grow slower, kept them on open pasture longer, didn't rush the feeding cycles, didn't force the weight gain. To him, it wasn't about finishing fast. It was about raising them right, letting them develop naturally, keeping them consistent, stronger, more stable over time. But from the outside, that difference didn't look like an advantage. It looked like a problem. The cattle weren't hitting weight as quickly. They didn't fit the standard timelines. They didn't match what most buyers were used to moving. Neighbors noticed. They always do. You're taking too long with them. Costs are going to catch up to you. Market's not built for that kind of herd. Calvin never argued, didn't try to explain it. He just kept doing what he had always done. Because to him, it wasn't about fitting the system. It was about raising something that held its value, even if it took longer to see it. And by the time the herd was ready, they didn't look all that different. Same size, same pasture, same animals. But what they had been raised for wasn't the same at all. The first buyer wasn't the only one. After he left, Calvin made more calls. Same response. Different voices. Same conclusion. They'd walk the herd, look them over, check the weight, then shake their heads. Too slow to finish. Not what we're buying right now. Doesn't fit our program. Some didn't even bother coming out. Others did, took one look, and made their decision before they were done. It'll cost too much to carry these. Market's moving faster than this. Try again when they're closer to spec. And just like that, another no. But this wasn't grain sitting in storage. It didn't just wait. Every day, those cattle had to be fed, watered, maintained. Costs didn't pause. They kept moving, whether a sale happened or not. By the end of the week, the pasture looked the same, the herd still there, untouched. And the pressure started to build, quiet at first, just enough to notice, because this wasn't the first time. There had been seasons when selling took longer, when buyers didn't quite understand what he was doing, when he had to wait, while others moved their cattle faster, but this time felt different. The rejections came quicker, more certain, like the decision had already been made, before anyone really looked at what he had. Neighbors started talking again. Still holding on to them? That's going to get expensive real fast. You might have to take a loss in this one. Calvin didn't respond, but he heard it, because the longer they stayed where they were, the more it started to look like they were right. That maybe he had taken too long. Maybe raising them slower had made them harder to sell. Maybe doing it his way had put him in the wrong position, and for the first time, he felt it. Not doubt in the work, but doubt in the timing. Because with every day that passed, he wasn't just waiting. He was paying for it. And there was no clear answer on how much longer he could. The call came early, before most buyers were even out in the field. The voice on the other end was steady, no hesitation, no small talk. You still got that herd? Calvin paused. Yeah. A short silence. Then, what have you been feeding them? Not how fast they could be finished. Not what price he was asking. Just that. Calvin gave him the answer. Grass. Supplemented, but not pushed. Raised steady. No shortcuts. And for the first time all week, the response wasn't hesitation. It was interest. Real interest. The man explained he was supplying a different kind of market. One that didn't want fast-finished cattle. Didn't want animals pushed through on a tight cycle. He needed consistency. Strength. Animals that held up. That could be processed on a different timeline. Handled differently. Shipped farther. Used for something most local buyers weren't set up for. Calvin didn't say much. He just listened. Because everything the man described was exactly why he had raised them that way. Not to fight the system, but to build something that lasted. The man asked one more question. How many head you got? Calvin told him. There was no pause, no negotiation. I'll take the whole herd. Calvin leaned against the fence for a moment, not answering right away. Then came the part that changed everything. I'm a few hours out. I'll be there today. Not next week. Not when it fit into a schedule. Now. Because to him, those cattle weren't a problem. They were exactly what he had been trying to find. The trucks showed up before noon. Multiple trailers. Out-of-state plates. Different from the others. No slow walk through the pasture. No hesitation. The buyer stepped out, took one look at the herd, and nodded. That was enough. They moved fast. Not rushed, just certain. Gates opened. Trailers backed in. And one by one, the cattle started moving. Calm, controlled. Like this had been decided long before they arrived. Word didn't take long to spread. It never does. By the time the second trailer was halfway loaded, a couple of the same buyers, who had turned him down earlier, were back, standing along the fence, watching, not saying much, just trying to understand what they were seeing. Because from the outside, nothing had changed. Same herd, same pasture, same man. But now, someone had come ready to take all of it. One of them finally stepped closer, rested his arms on the fence, shook his head. What's different about them? Calvin didn't answer right away. He didn't explain it, didn't break it down. He just said, I didn't rush them. That was it. And standing there, watching something they had all passed on, being loaded without hesitation. There was only one thing left to understand. The cattle hadn't changed. The value hadn't changed. Only the way they looked at them had. After that, things didn't suddenly change. The same buyers were still out there, still moving fast, still working on tight timelines. And most of them would have passed on that herd all over again. Because it wasn't about them being wrong. It was about them needing something different. What Calvin had raised was never meant for everyone. It didn't fit the fastest system. It didn't match the usual schedule. And it wasn't built for quick turnover. But it had value. The kind that doesn't always show up right away. The kind that only matters when it needs to hold up. And once it found the right buyer, everything changed. Not the herd, not the method, just the understanding of it. Calvin didn't change the way he worked after that. Didn't try to speed things up, didn't try to make it fit what everyone else was doing. He just kept raising them the same way. Slower, steady, consistent, because he understood something most people overlook. That moving faster doesn't always mean moving better, and not everything needs to be built for everyone. Some things are only valuable when they're done a certain way and seen by the right person. And sometimes that's enough.